The Way Back Home, a prodigal daughter story. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. He ran to his son, threw his arms around him, and kissed him. Luke 15:20. There is a photograph on the fireplace mantel of a house in Duluth, Minnesota. A girl, maybe 17, laughing at something off camera. Blonde, bright-eyed, wearing a soccer jersey with a number 7 on it. Her mother is in the frame too, half turned toward her daughter with the expression of a woman who cannot quite believe she gets to have this. This girl, this laugh, this moment. The photograph has been on that mantel for 7 years. For the last 3 of those years, nobody has moved it. Not because they've forgotten who that girl was, because they haven't. Her name is Paige Donnelly. She is 24 years old. And the distance between the girl in the photograph and the woman she became is a distance that her parents, her mother Karen, her father Bill, have spent 3 years trying to understand and have not been able to close, no matter how hard they have tried. The locks on their doors were changed 8 months ago. They changed them because they had to. They changed them and then stood in the kitchen and looked at each other across a silence that held everything they had not been able to say out loud. That their daughter was somewhere in Duluth, and they did not know where. And that the love they had for her was the most useless feeling in the world when the person you love is unreachable. This is the story of how Paige Donnelly found her way back. Not quickly, not cleanly, not without cost, but back. Before we move forward with the story, please like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell to help us to grow this channel to uplift more people. The photograph tells the truth about who Paige was. She was a good student, not top of her class, but present, engaged, the kind of student who had opinions about the books she was assigned, and argued them with the specific confidence of a girl who had been told she was worth listening to. She played soccer from age 8 through her junior year of high school. She had a group of 4 close friends, the kind of tight circle friendships that form in small cities where everyone knows everyone, and the group has been through enough together to be real. She was funny. She was her mother's daughter. Karen had the same laugh, the same quick wit, the same ability to make a room feel warmer just by being in it. Bill was quieter, steadier, an electrician who expressed love through reliability rather than words, who showed up to every game and every recital and every parent-teacher conference, and whose presence was a form of safety that Paige had always taken for granted. This is the important detail about the before. Nothing in Paige's life required what happened next. There was no tragedy waiting to be pointed to as the cause, no rupture in the foundation that explained the collapse. There was a girl who was loved well and who made a choice at 19 that had a consequence she could not have seen from where she was standing. The choice was a party at a house she didn't know well, in the winter of her freshman year at the University of Minnesota Duluth, where someone she had just met offered her something she had never tried. She said yes because she was 19 and in a new city, and her roommate had just told her she was moving off campus. And the particular loneliness of that specific kind of displacement had been building for 2 months, and the party was warm, and the person was friendly, and the offer came with a confidence that made it seem like the most normal thing in the world. It was not the most normal thing in the world. It was a dangerous, illegal substance, the kind that doesn't offer second chances to the people it chooses. And for Paige Donnelly, with whatever specific combination of brain chemistry and circumstance, and that particular Tuesday evening, it was, from the very first time, the thing that answered a question she hadn't known she was asking. The first 6 months were what people who study addiction call the honeymoon period. She was still in school, still calling home on Sundays, still the girl in the photograph largely, with a secret she was managing with the confidence of someone who did not yet understand that this particular secret could not be managed. By the end of the first year, she had dropped 2 classes. By the middle of the second year, she had left school without telling her parents, who believed for 3 months that she was still enrolled. The discovery, when Karen called the university about a financial aid form, was the first fracture. The conversation that followed was the kind of conversation that parents and children have when the thing being discussed is too large for the relationship's existing vocabulary. Bill drove to Duluth. He sat in Paige's apartment, a different apartment from the dorm, an apartment with 2 other people who were not enrolled anywhere. And he looked at his daughter and felt the specific, cold understanding of a man who is seeing something clearly for the first time and wishes he were not. Paige told them it was under control. She had believed that when she said it. She did not say it again after that, because by the time it came up again, she had stopped believing it herself. The stealing started at 21. Not from her parents first, from roommates, from a part-time job at a coffee shop that ended abruptly, from a friend who had been generous and who stopped being a friend the week she discovered her cash missing. The circle of friends from high school, Becca, Tori, and Kelsey, the girls from the photograph years, tried 3 times. They drove to Duluth. They sat with her. They said the things that people say when they love someone who is in trouble. The 3rd time, Becca had cried the entire drive home, and Tori had said, quietly, that she didn't think there was anything left they could do. The phone calls from those friends stopped. The new circle was different. Not cruel people, people in the same cycle, which was its own kind of cruelty. People who understood the rhythm of the need and the obtaining and the relief and the need again because they were living it themselves. People who were, without intending to be, the walls of a prison that felt, from the inside, like the only available community. She moved 4 times in 18 months, each apartment smaller, more chaotic, further from anything her parents would recognize. Paige Donnelly had a jewelry box on her dresser. It had been her mother's, a small wooden box with a brass clasp, filled with the accumulation of 40 years of gifts and inheritance, and the occasional indulgence, a pearl necklace from her own mother, a sapphire ring from her 30th birthday, her grandmother's brooch, a gold bracelet from the year she and Bill got married. None of it was extravagant. All of it was irreplaceable. Paige had a key to the house. She had always had a key to the house. The key had existed for 22 years as a physical expression of the fact that she was welcome there, that the house was hers as much as it was theirs, that she could come home whenever she needed to. She used that key on a Thursday afternoon in February when she knew her parents were both at work. She went to the bedroom. She opened the jewelry box. She told herself, at the moment she was doing it, something she had become very skilled at telling herself. It's temporary. I'll get it back. They won't notice yet. She took the pearl necklace, the sapphire ring, the gold bracelet. She left the brooch. She told herself afterward that leaving the brooch was evidence of a line she hadn't crossed. It was not evidence of a line. It was evidence of how good she had become at constructing narratives that made the thing she was doing smaller than it was. Karen discovered the missing jewelry the following Sunday. The phone call between Karen and Paige was the worst conversation in 24 years of a relationship that had been, before all of this, one of the closest relationships in either of their lives. Karen did not yell. She was past yelling. She spoke in the quiet, flat voice of a woman who has absorbed so many shocks that her nervous system has stopped producing the acute responses and has moved into something chronic. She said, "I need you to tell me the truth." Paige lied. Karen said, "I know you're lying." Paige cried. It was real crying. The tears were genuine. She was genuinely sorry in the specific way of someone who is sorry and also cannot stop. Karen said, "I love you, Paige. I love you with everything I have, and I cannot let you in this house anymore until something changes." The locks were changed 3 weeks later, after Paige came home again, without calling, finding the key no longer worked, and broke a window. She broke a window. She would sit with that detail for a long time afterward. The breaking of a window of her parents' house. The specific image of it. What it meant about who she had become, and how far she had traveled from the girl in the photograph on the mantel. She had thought, at various points along the descent, that she had reached bottom. She had been wrong each time. The actual bottom came on a night in January, the coldest month in a Minnesota winter, which is a specific and serious kind of cold, the kind that is not metaphorical and does not care about your circumstances. She was in an apartment she had been staying in for 6 weeks. Not her apartment, someone else's. a tolerance extended by a man she did not trust, and in a building with a broken heating system. The circumstances she was in were the direct consequence of every choice she had made over the previous 3 years, which she understood in the abstract and could not connect to any specific decision, because each specific decision had felt, at the time, like the only available option. She was very sick. Not sick in a general sense. Sick in the specific, serious way of a body that has been running a deficit for 3 years and is beginning to present the bill. She was on the floor of a bathroom that was not hers. The tile was cold. There was a mirror above the sink that she could see from the floor. And what she could see in that mirror was not a reflection she recognized. She thought about her mother's pearl necklace. She thought about Becca driving home from Duluth crying. She thought about a photograph on a mantle and a girl in a soccer jersey with a number 7 on it. She thought, that person is not recoverable. And then, immediately, underneath it, a different thought arrived. Not hers, she would say later, not something she could have produced from inside the state she was in. You don't know that yet. She lay on the bathroom floor of a stranger's apartment in January in Minnesota, and that thought sat with her for a long time. She picked up her phone. The battery was at 4%. She called the only number she had not burned, the one she had been unable to make herself delete even at her lowest, her mother. It rang twice. Karen answered on the second ring. She said 2 words, "Mom, help." The battery died before Karen could respond. Karen did not know where Paige was. She did not have an address. She had a phone number for the woman whose name appeared most often in Paige's older texts. A woman named Sherry, whom Karen had never met, but had saved the number for in the specific preparatory way of a mother who is getting ready for a call she hopes never comes, but needs to be ready for. She called Sherry. Sherry didn't answer. She called Bill. He was in his truck in 8 minutes. They drove to the last address they had for Paige, the apartment from 8 months ago that she no longer lived in. The woman who answered the door there told them a street name. Bill drove to the street. Karen went door to door. The 4th door. Paige was on the bathroom floor. What happened next, Karen does not describe in detail to anyone who asks. What she will say is that she got down on the floor with her daughter, that she did not say anything for a long time, that she held her. Bill called for emergency services. They came. The hospital in Duluth was warm. Paige would remember the warmth specifically. The specific warmth of a building that was heated in January in Minnesota, which is not a trivial thing, and which felt, from the floor she had been on, like the most significant physical sensation she had experienced in months. She was there for 5 days. A social worker named Ms. Henriksen came on the 2nd day. She had the practical, unhurried manner of a woman who had been in this room with this conversation many times and who understood that what was needed was not a lecture, but a next step. The next step was a residential treatment program in the Twin Cities, a 90-day program with an opening, which Ms. Henriksen had already called about before she walked into Paige's room because she had learned to move faster than the window of willingness sometimes stayed open. Paige said yes, not from a place of certainty, from a place of 4% battery and a bathroom floor, and the specific exhaustion of a person who has run completely out of the ability to do what they have been doing. She said yes. Karen and Bill drove her to the Twin Cities on a Saturday morning. The drive was mostly quiet. Bill kept both hands on the wheel. Karen kept her hand on Paige's hand in the back seat for most of the 3 hours. Paige did not say much. At one point she said, "I took your jewelry." Karen said, "I know. I'm sorry." Karen said, "I know that too." They didn't say anything else about it for a long time. The treatment program was called New Ground. It was what it said it was. 90 days of the specific, unglamorous, non-linear work of learning to exist in your own life without the thing you have been using to make existence tolerable. The first 2 weeks were purely physical, the body reclaiming itself from a 3-year deficit, which was a process that Paige would describe later as the worst and most necessary thing she had ever experienced. The weeks after were the interior work. She met with a counselor named Mr. Torres 3 times a week, a quiet man who asked questions that were simple and not simple, and who had the specific patience of someone who understood that the answers came when they came, and could not be hurried. She was in a group with 7 other women. They were different ages, different backgrounds, different substances, different entry points into the same cycle. By the 4th week, she knew their stories with the specific intimacy of people who have been in the same room with their defenses down and have stopped performing okay for each other. She called her parents on Sundays. The calls were short at first, then longer. Then the kind of calls where nobody was managing the conversation, just talking, the way they had talked when she was 17 and the photograph was being taken, and the distance between who she was and who she was becoming was not yet visible. On the 63rd day, she called Karen and said, "Mom, I want to go to church when I get out. Not the church I grew up in. Something, I don't know, different. Can we find something?" Karen was quiet for a moment. She said, "I've actually been going somewhere." Karen Donnelly had walked into Redemption Hills Seventh-day Adventist Church in Duluth on a Saturday morning in October, 6 months before the January bathroom floor, in the specific state of a woman who has tried everything she knows how to try and has nothing left except the oldest resource. She had not been a church-going woman, vaguely Christian in the cultural sense, Christmas and Easter, a faith that was more background than practice. She had gone because a woman at her office named Ruth had invited her 4 times, and because on the 4th invitation, Karen had nothing left to say no with. She had met Pastor Samuel Osei, 48, Ghanaian American, with the steady quality of a man who had held many things for many people and had not been crushed by any of it. He had a gift for preaching that was less about performance and more about precision, saying the exact true thing in the exact right order. She had come back the following Saturday, and the one after that. She had told Pastor Osei about Paige in their 3rd conversation. He had listened with the completeness of a man who understood that the most important thing he could do in that moment was receive what she was saying without reducing it. He had said, Luke 15, the parable of the lost son. The father sees him while he is still a long way off. That means the father was looking. Every day, the father was looking. He had looked at Karen. Keep looking. She had kept looking. She had been looking since October. On a Tuesday in April, 93 days after the Saturday morning Bill had driven Paige to the Twin Cities, Paige Donnelly walked into Redemption Hills Seventh-day Adventist Church beside her mother for the first time. Pastor Osei was preaching from Luke 15 that morning, not because he knew Paige was coming. Karen had not told him. He had been working through a series on restoration for 6 weeks, and Luke 15 was simply next. He read verse 20. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. He ran to his son, threw his arms around him, and kissed him. He said, "I want you to notice the sequence. The son is still a long way off. He has not yet arrived. He has not yet made his speech, the one he rehearsed, the one where he confesses and asks to be taken back as a servant rather than a son. He hasn't said any of it yet." A pause. The father runs before the speech. The father embraces before the explanation. The compassion is not contingent on the performance of repentance. It is the response to the return. He looked at the congregation. "Some of you have been the son," he said. "Some of you have been the father, standing at the window, watching the road." He paused. "And some of you are sitting in this room today because someone who loved you kept looking down that road every single day that you were gone." Paige was sitting in the 4th row between her parents. She was not crying. She was very still, the stillness of a person receiving something that is filling a space that has been empty for a long time. Bill had his arm around her. Karen had her hand on her knee. After the service, Pastor Osei found them in the fellowship hall. He looked at Paige and said simply, "I'm glad you're home." Not, "I've heard about you." Not, "Your mother has told me everything." Just, "I'm glad you're home." Paige looked at him. She said, "I'm not sure I know what home is anymore." He said, "That's all right. You don't have to know yet. You just have to be here." 6 months after the first Saturday at Redemption Hills, Karen was getting ready for church when she noticed something on her dresser. The jewelry box. She had not opened it in almost a year. She had moved past what was missing and had not replaced anything because replacing it had felt, somehow, beside the point. She opened it. The pearl necklace was inside. The sapphire ring was inside. The gold bracelet was inside. She stood at her dresser and stared at the open box for a long time. She went downstairs. Paige was in the kitchen. She had been staying in her old room for 3 weeks, a tentative, carefully negotiated arrangement that was still finding its shape. She was making coffee the way she had always made it. 2 sugars, a splash of something, the specific morning ritual of a person reclaiming ordinary things. She looked at her mother. Karen was holding the jewelry box. Paige said, "I got them back. I've been working and I found the pawn shop and It took a while, because the bracelet had already been sold to someone else, and I had to wait until they were willing to part with it. She stopped. She looked at her mother. "I know it doesn't undo it." Karen put the jewelry box on the kitchen counter. She crossed the kitchen. She held her daughter. She held her the way she had held her on a bathroom floor in January, without conditions, without a speech, without the performance of having processed everything completely. She held her because she was there, because she had come back. While she was still a long way off, Karen had been looking, and she was not a long way off anymore. She was in the kitchen. She was home. Paige Donnelly is 1 year and 4 months into her recovery. She has a job, a real one, at a landscape company that a member of Redemption Hills had offered after hearing her story through Karen. She works outside, which she had not known she needed until she had it. She comes home in the evenings, smelling like soil and Minnesota air. She goes to church on Saturdays, not because Karen asked her to, because Luke 15:20 is now on a note card on her bathroom mirror. Not the verse itself, but 3 words from it. His father ran. She looks at those words every morning. She is rebuilding relationships slowly. Tori responded to a letter she wrote. Becca has not responded yet, and Paige is learning to hold that with the patience of someone who understands that the return does not automatically restore everything that the leaving cost. She is not all the way back. She says this herself, plainly, to the women in the recovery group she now attends on Thursday evenings at Redemption Hills, a group that did not exist 6 months ago and that Pastor Osei asked Paige to help him start. She says, "I am not all the way back, but I know which direction back is. And I know someone kept watching the road the whole time I was gone. And I know that the embrace came before I finished my speech." The women in the circle listen. Some of them are in the early chapters. Some of them need to know that the Father runs. Paige tells them, every Thursday. She tells them, the parable of the lost son in Luke 15 is the most famous story about return in all of Scripture. Jesus told it to a specific audience, religious people who were complaining that he spent time with people who had made serious mistakes. His answer was a story about a father who ran. Paige Donnelly's story carries the same truth in a modern frame. For anyone who loves someone in the grip of addiction, who has changed locks, who has stopped answering calls, who has driven to Duluth and gone door to door and gotten on a bathroom floor, those things are not failures of love. Sometimes they are love's most difficult and necessary expressions. And the keeping of hope, the keeping of the watch, the looking down the road every day, that is the Father's posture in the parable. Hold it as long as you can. For anyone who is Paige, who is somewhere in the descent, who sees a reflection they don't recognize, who has burned through the trust of people who loved them, the parable does not end with the son staying in the far country. It ends with the embrace that came before the speech was finished. That embrace is available. The road back is long and it is real and it requires help. Real, professional, sustained help. But it exists. And for anyone in between, not the addict, not the parent, but the Becca who has stopped calling, and the Tori who wrote back, and the friend who doesn't know which one to be. There is no wrong answer for how much you can give. Loving someone in active addiction while protecting yourself is not selfishness. It is wisdom. Give what you can. Pray what you can. And if the letter arrives, consider writing back. His father saw him while he was still a long way off. God sees people while they are still a long way off. The road back is never as long as it looks from the far country. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. He ran to his son, threw his arms around him, and kissed him. Luke 15:20. If you or someone you love is struggling with addiction, help is available. SAMHSA, National Helpline, 1-800-662-4357. Free, confidential, 24/7, 365 days a year. samhsa.gov. For families, Al-Anon family groups, alanon.org. 1888 for Al-Anon. If you enjoyed this story, please like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell to be notified about more inspirational stories on redemption and hope.